You get something from it every time. It makes me very teary every time I see it. Um, but it's about redemption, and it's about the fruition of coming to be an adult and taking on responsibility. And that's what it is, and it's a triumph of good over evil. And I think that kind of story will um, always be interesting to people because that's what we all try to get the best out of ourselves. I think in the end, that's what Simba gets out of himself through his trials and tribulations and his banishment by his evil uncle. And then the redemption and the thing, yes, I must go back. I am, when he talks to his father, it's very moving. And it never fails to move me. It's just astonishing. When I wrote the original songs for The Lion King, I knew the film would be successful, but nobody had an idea of how successful this story would be and how long it would run for, and will run and run and run because generations of children will be born and they'll go and see it. It's a wonderful story for children to see. It's a little sad in places, but that's life. It's about life. Whether it's human life or animal life, it's still the same thing. We revere our parents. We're sad when they die. And it's about being the man or the woman you can become because of your background. And it's just astonishing to me that I'm involved with something that's been so successful. Tim is just an adorable kind of person you want to spend time with. And when he rang me and said, listen, Disney are making this film called The Lion King, and they asked me who I'd like to write with, and I said Elton John. They said, well, you'll never get him. And I said, well, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'd love to work with you. And then I got to see the script, I got to see the little animation boards, and then I got to see, as it came together. I have Tim to thank for the whole experience of The Lion King. That one phone call he made to me, again, in life you get these phone calls that change your life. That changed my life and my career. There's about 5 songs in the film from the original. Hakuna Matata, Circle of Life, Can You Feel the Love Tonight, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, and The Morning Report. And they wanted a song for the end, and I think Beyonce's written a song which is also going to be in the film. So it's a no-brainer. I mean, seeing as we were such a big part of the first thing, it was nice to be included in the second. Hans and I have been friends for so many years, and he's been great on this project and keeping me filled in and saying, listen, I think we're going to need a different song. This is not going to work. And if Hans says that, then I'm okay with it. And so we went in and wrote another song. I'm not too proud. If something's not working and you want to be involved with something that really works, then you go and try again. There's no egos being bashed. She said, right, let's go and write another song. Tim, you meet in an up-tempo lyric. And we did it pretty quickly, but it was what was needed, and I was happy to comply with that. It's lovely to get the opportunity to write another song for the movie. It's obviously the same story, but told in a completely different way. This is photoreal. This is quite astonishing. This is a technique that's really brand new, really, and it takes a long time to get, and Jon Favreau is the master of it. So you want to be involved no matter what. It's the Lion King, for Christ's sake. It's never too late to change, and that's what Simba goes through in this whole journey. It's never too late to change your mind about things, look at your life and say, I've got to change. It happened to me during my life. I had an epiphany in 1990. This is about having an epiphany in your life and saying, I need to take a fresh look at what I'm doing. I'm not doing the right thing. I'm going to do the right thing for my family, for myself, and for all the animals involved in the jungle. We don't want Scar. He's a bad egg. So this is a great message, and it's kind of similar to the way I've lived my life as well. So it really resonates with me. The people who saw it as children will be taking their children to see this. And so it's a whole new experience. I mean, forget the animation movie. This is a whole different thing. It's the same story, but it's more realistic because it looks real. I think people who love the original are going to love this one.
It was just great having all my favorite players in the room, and just people sort of being aware that they were working on something which was really quite special and quite precious. There had been a period, sort of a year ago or so, where I just got the band together and we just tried to sort of completely reinvent it. It didn't work. You know, it's like it didn't matter that what we were doing was new and fresh and fabulous. It wasn't the movie. So it surprised me that the themes I'd written all those years ago actually sort of held up. It's just they needed to be played. They needed to be played by great musicians, which is, I mean, this is a considerably bigger movie and a considerably more epic movie, but weirdly, what I had done 25 years ago, not really knowing how an animated movie works, I'd written these huge epic themes, you know, and in a funny way, what happened this time by having this photorealism and having you know, just Jon's direction, who he just opened it up so the themes could actually breathe, you know, and you could really do something with them. It's like 25 years ago, I was waiting for this version of this movie to come. It started off with Jon phoning me and going, did I want to come down to where they, you know, where they were making the movie? And you know, it wasn't a normal set. It was just this huge warehouse by the airport. You know, it's like most unglamorous place you can go to. And so they had built a little theater in it, and I said, "Here, let me show you the opening." And I went, "Yeah, you know, whatever. I've seen this sort of thing before." No, I hadn't. I mean, what he was doing and how it looked, and it just it. I didn't think I was capable of being moved by something I had done before and been so involved with before, and it just really moved me. And I thought, yeah, yeah, I want to be part of it. You know, you know, I want to help him tell the story again, because here's a man who really seems to know how to do this. It was such a gift to me because it meant I had to actually deal with some of my demons of my dad dying. And it was such a gift to me because I got to have this connection with my little girl in an extraordinary way. I mean, you know, being a film composer is already a pretty lucky job, you know, but to actually make it that personal and make it that close to home, you know, and I never would have thought that a cartoon, you know, which is how I used to call it before we started working on it, before it drew me in, before it changed my life, you know. I never thought that movie would set me on this path of discovering things, of having that experience, and I never thought it would affect people, would give people such an enormous experience. You know, and it does it on a daily basis. You know, I mean, all over the world, people go to see the stage show, and people are waiting for this movie. And what Jon has done is so, I mean, it truly is revolutionary. We're just such good friends, but it's partly just watching him work with actors that aren't singers, and getting amazing things out of them, and you suddenly go, "Oh yeah, hang on, I get it. He did all that stuff on The Voice. He knows how to do this." And he was just he was just our champion for making sure we kept including Africa in the movie. You know, this was important. On Lion King, we had this idea. I found this orchestra in New York, which was basically an African American orchestra. So we got them to come to Los Angeles, put a lot of the musicians that had played on the original Lion King in amongst them as well, and then just rehearse them for 2 days, and just had this idea that it should be like a performance, that it shouldn't be like we are recording a movie, it should be like we're doing a concert. And I put like 20 seats out front, so and put all the filmmakers, like the cameraman, you know, the DP and the editor, into the room, so that it really did feel like they were doing a concert, and we would just do the movie like a show. It was always really important that, you know, Africa had literally a voice in this, and so, you know, Lebo went back to South Africa, recorded choirs for days, because that was always the idea. You know, we really did it the old-fashioned way. We had the big screen up so that the movie was playing. So, you know, we were in that world constantly. And everybody just brought the best, the best energy. But it's not so much the energy, it's they just played from their hearts. And one of the things which I think is really important in this is, I mean, Jon Favreau has such a big heart, and he leads with his heart, and you really, you know, you try to do justice to that, you know, within the music.
When you say Lion King, you want to show up whatever it is, whether it is in a film, whether it is animation, a stage play, street theater. It's like the Lion King, man. It's everybody's family story. Somebody like Favreau, what we bring is, that's the storyteller, whoever is directing, and you are parts of sentence construction, and you give them everything. It's like, okay, here's all the nouns, the verbs, here's the way and then let them assemble. So I show up, Jon and his whole group, who've been working already a couple of years, I'm there to help them tell the story. You can only do it with your voice. It is rare to have an actor who can direct it, or that it goes both ways, and he's one of those sweet spots. And I mean, you know, I don't encourage it in anybody thinking they can direct just because they act, and directing the other way either. But the other thing that Jon has, he's got facility, and he's got such, his humanity is such, I believe, that he sees people and he hears people. And he actually cares about people. So whenever you're bringing people to life as a storyteller, as an actor, that helps when you have the ability to do that. You can put some skill on it, but skill also won't make the kind of actor that draws you in and holds you. And as a director, you have to be able to do that on a macro level, because then you're like a daddy with 100 children who you are meant to make them feel like they're the only child in the room, and you know that you speak differently to each one. So because I think of his humanity and the way he looks at people, he sees, and he's able to translate it, first of all, into action as an actor into vision, I think, as a filmmaker. And so, Lion King, not that it's the only one, but it's a perfect story for him to helm. No matter what is happening, it is up to Sarabi. She's sort of standing in lead position as a lioness, but it is definitely a community of lionesses. They're the ones you don't want to mess with, as opposed to the one guy that's running around, or what do you call it, trotting or loping around, marking territory and all of that. So we do what lionesses do, what women always have done. We hold down the fort through locusts and fires and deranged brother-in-laws. So that's what happens. And I think it is not an acquiescing, but I think women know. They choose their battles, and they know when to fight, when to strike, and that was interesting finding that. I want everybody to feel like in their lives there's nothing that has happened, nothing that they've failed at, or nothing that's been done to them, or anything that defines them. They get to rebirth. They get to come again.
So the idea here was create an environment that everybody intuitively understands, give them a little bit of superpowers so they can pick up trees or fly through the air, but make it reach for their gut, not for their brain, so that people are making a movie from the heart or from the inside rather than, well, in the course of a series of emails that I wrote over the course of 8 months, I think I described what I wanted in this shot, and then one day I saw it and hopefully had enough time to react to it. It took, a couple of days for everybody to get comfortable with virtual reality. And it took a couple of weeks for everybody to get comfortable with what the tools are capable of. And now, because they keep pushing the envelope and asking for new capabilities or new things, it's an ongoing process. The overarching strategy for how we built this system was to recreate as closely as possible a live-action film set. We all know how they work, and there are certain advancements in technology that you find on film sets, like super techno dollies and stuff like that. I mean, you got really complicated pieces of kit that people have, over the course of many shoots, kind of figured out how to wrap their heads around those capabilities. But we generally built the foundation to assume that it was going to work like a live-action movie set with all modern live-action movie equipment.
So to get the call to be a part of that legacy is really shocking and thrilling. And again, I think what I love about Timon and Pumbaa is that they're the comic relief. The Lion King is, it's a sad story in a way. It's definitely a moving story. It's not just this big splashy comedic animated musical the way we sometimes see. There's a lot of emotion in it, a lot of levels to it. And I, along with Seth, get to be sort of the comic presence, the most bold comic presence of the movie, and that's something that I enjoy doing, obviously. And so, Timon and Pumbaa are iconic characters, so it really is an honor to get to sort of do my spin on it, I guess. I think Timon is a bit of a showman. At least I'm playing him that way. I think Timon likes to be the center of attention. He's this little guy. I'm a pretty big person in real life, but Timon is small, but he behaves like a big person. And he has a big personality. There's a great sense of entitlement. He's very quick to make himself the center of attention and then also let you know how exhausted he is by all of it, and I'm playing around with that a lot, and I relate to him, his sarcasm, his energy, he has a lot of personality. Seth is so genuinely charming. And just, his voice is so instantly recognizable. It's so unique, and there's so much charm there and so much likability, and a real vulnerability that I think fits Pumbaa perfectly. And I think, we're a really good mix, I think. It's like a good yin and yang scenario with me and Seth. Well, it's Hakuna Matata, and people really love Hakuna Matata. And Hakuna Matata as a phrase has stayed with us for the decade since the original Lion King. That's part of the cultural lexicon. So, on the one hand, you don't want to mess with it too much because people want to hear Hakuna Matata. I mean, Hakuna Matata was pretty solid already. At the same time, we're throwing in some jokes here and there. We don't want to just copy what Nathan and Ernie Sabella did with the original Timon and Pumbaa. We want to put our spin on it. Jon's amazing. I really, sometimes you work with people that you don't trust as much, or you don't know whether you can trust them, especially with comedy because it's so subjective, But with Jon, I know his previous work. I know him as a person. I fully and completely trust his point of view, so it's never really a fight. He's so collaborative. He chose me to be in it. I didn't have to audition for it. He knew my work and he wanted me in this. So I trust the fact that he trusts me. And likewise, it's very much a two-way street. I trust him too. And he's living with The Lion King, day in and day out for years and preparing this movie. So no one knows it better than he does.
It's so iconic. It's so incredible. It's. I remember it from my childhood, really, from being quite young and just being totally blown away by it. I mean, it's an amazing story. It's got all this Shakespearean sort of relevance to it. It's got these songs that are so amazingly catchy, and then you're not worried about humming them all day. You kind of enjoy it going round and round in your head. It was a full experience. It was like nothing else, really. These stories are so epic, and they have these great arcs. They have these great heroes, great villains, and they have these amazing stories and this great kind of compass, this real sense of social consciousness, a real kind of moral idea at the heart of them. So they're very appealing, and they're very informative as well as entertaining. And these characters actually take you on extraordinary journeys and emotional journeys and very complicated journeys, So, I mean, what's not to like about that in a way? You just kind of go along for the ride of these films. And so bringing them back in this way, in a way that can actually be, in some ways, like more relatable, where you can really just sort of fall down the rabbit hole, with these characters in this way, is pretty stunning. I play Scar, and he's he's a very complicated, malevolent character, and therefore kind of fun to play, but and I think Scar works as a bad guy because he is, there's nothing mundane about him. There's nothing sort of, he doesn't want anything sort of as everyday, as revenge or, he's not, fighting for those things, for sort of small things. He wants power. He wants it all. And there's nothing that he won't do to get it, So he's an incredible character in that way. He'll push all of the boundaries. He'll do absolutely anything and everything to get what he wants. And he's sort of written with a slyness, with a kind of, almost with a little twinkle. And that is, incredibly interesting and fun to step into. It's a very complicated relationship between Scar and Simba, and of course it's the area in which Scar shows himself to be the most kind of heartless and the most sort of malevolent, and this kind of trick of convincing Simba that he's responsible for his own father's death is just at the heart of the nature of this kind of very scheming character. Jon just seems to have it all there, and it's all kind of working, and he understands every part of the journey, and he understands as well how to, obviously being an actor as well, just how to work with actors and how to get the best out of them, and how to really support actors, especially it's some of it is slightly newer territory for me in this, and so having somebody who's really very aware of that and very sensitive to it and can really kind of just guide you through all the choices and the ranges of it, and so you can really sort of find the character and find that performance and find how you kind of tell the story.
When I first heard Jon was doing it, I was very excited because I really liked the Jungle Book adaptation he did. He has a really good knack for updating things without changing them, really. I think that's really hard to do. Most people hate sequels. I understand. I'm one of those people. I don't like, it's not even change, but I don't like it when things don't have a voice, and sometimes the voice that's in it already is enough, but he really cares about the project and really wants to speak to it, and I think the message that this movie has is extremely relevant, and it's like the first one where it's a different message, but they're both relevant all the time. I think it's a very human and honest story of what everything goes through. Like, nothing's permanent. I think that's what I think it's such a great and beautiful way of showing, even talking to children about how permanence is not the point. Like, more is not the point. The point is to be here and to be responsible for each other and, love each other. I think that's a really, it's an absolute of, like, there's always going to be change and there's always going to be each other, so why are we not helping each other? So I think that's, very special. Simba is, Mufasa's son and rightful king. I think the approach we took was, talking to Jon a lot about the character and, like, what the actual point of this movie was, or like the theme that he wanted to circle around. I think it was about, being stunted, and having something traumatic happen to you and not allowing that to consume your entire life. Which is, very true. Like, you can make all these decisions, you can Hakuna Matata it, or you can actually grow up and just learn from that experience. Simba is the prince, his father Mufasa is the king, and something horrible happens where his father dies at the hands of his brother, although Simba's not sure of it at that time, and his uncle tells him to run away and just don't come back so he can kind of take his place. And Simba's whole journey is really deciding, like, am I going to face this or am I just going to run away forever? And I think, that's the sad part. Is, like, some people, sometimes you just do run away forever, like, because it's too painful to go back. This has been a really incredible experience. I've never seen anything made this way before. I don't think there has been anything made this way before. So getting to hang out and see how things are made is really great. The animators are so talented, and just getting to see how they're doing this, and, the stage and the camera work, and, the drawings and the animatics, and, like, I feel really blessed to be a part of it, just on a technical level of getting to see how it's done.
I was 11 when the 1994 version came out, and it was a precious time for me. I was a very impressionable young boy, and I was stoked to do it. I just love Favreau, and I love the movie, and I love the Jungle Book, so I love that we're doing a 3D photorealistic animation version of a classic. It's really cool, and the cast is amazing too. Yeah, the tech is amazing. We saw little virtual reality mock-ups of each scene and how they kind of animate to the VR shots that they come up with. It blows my mind. Simba is coming of age, and he is challenging his father indirectly, and he's in a pre-adolescent rebellious phase, and he goes into the elephant graveyard against his father's best wishes. Keegan's awesome. He's such a brilliant improviser, and he's such a giant comedic brain. He makes life a lot easier. Favreau is great because he comes out of improv and Second City, and he's easier to communicate with. And he's a performer. He lives on both sides of the camera, so he's really easy to communicate with. And just his demeanor, he's such a Zen master.
What I find so special about the movie, the story is just so nice, this young Simba who is really innocent in the beginning, and he wants to become king, and then the evil uncle who also wants to be the ruler of the, of their home, and he has to grow up. And what I always thought was special about the movie was that you see a character dying, a character that you like, and then you ask yourself, it happened so early, what will be the kid's experience, or the cup's experience from now on. And he grows up and he comes back and then he takes what's his. So that's special. Shenzi is a hyena, and hyenas and lions have been at war all the time. So she is also someone who wants to have power. She's also someone who doesn't feel comfortable with her life, and she lives in a pack, so she has a lot of people around her. She is a leader, and she's also a threat, and definitely someone you can't trust. Well, he encounters the hyenas because he makes a mistake. He goes to a place he's not supposed to go to, and he has been led there. It's not a coincidence that he ended up there. And he meets them, and he is a cute little, how can I say that? Like a little mini king who thinks, you know what, you can't touch me because I am the son of the king. And this is not really reality. And the only reason why he doesn't get killed the first time they meet is because Mufasa is around. He's fun to work with. He's also very funny. I remember the session, when we were in the black box and we were laughing around. But he also knows what he wants, and he can really lead you in the right direction. I like that too. And today, for example, we're at different places, but we're still working together. But I hear his voice and I know what he wants. And sometimes if I'm not on it, he has a nice way to describe what he needs. Sometimes he would even give you an example, and then he tells you oh, don't do it like this because that's wrong. But I get an idea. So I like working. I trust him.
First of all, it's storyline and just how impactful the message is that the movie just puts out there. Hakuna Matata, Mufasa's quotes, all of the things that he says to Simba, and just all of the things that could really help somebody. Well, I did do my research. I did watch the movie a few times. That's not really research, but I watched the movie a few times just check it out. I hadn't watched it in a while, so I was like, hey, let's pop in the movie. Let's watch it. And I watched it. It was good as usual. And probably the day of recording, I was very prepared. So I think that helped. I would say Simba is a very brave, courageous, and a king. He's a very, very sure of himself type of guy. I think their relationship is very great. It's pretty sad that he died because he was very young. And I still think that their relationship is very close and very tight. He's the best. He is my favorite director, first of all. I just gotta put that out there. He's my favorite director that I've worked with, that I've met. And he's just a really great person. Like, he remembered my birthday. He remembered my brother's birthday. He's really nice. He was a great director.
Well, we knew when we started that we were going to be working without actors on the stage, so we had to do something fundamentally different about the way we capture the actors' performances. So Jon Favreau, being an actor himself and starting off as an actor, was very mindful of keeping this rooted in real human emotions. So he developed something that we call the black box theater. Instead of actors standing in front of music stands with their reading glasses and reading off a script and doing what wonderful animated films have done for decades, we thought we'd take that to the next level and have a theater in the round, an environment where the technology disappears, the cameras are hidden, behind curtains, and men wearing black and women wearing black costumes as set up as camera operators, and just to let the actors emote, just to let them walk around in a space off book, maybe looking at their iPad perhaps, but being really in the environment that they imagine themselves to be in. And we recorded those actors in this black box theater and got real emotions and real dynamics between them. I'm excited by being involved in a milestone technological picture. I think this is really crossing new horizons, not only in terms of photoreality, but in terms of capturing real-time animation using cameras, virtual lights, basically playing a video game, the result of which is a movie. So that's very exciting, but it's a twofold dynamic because one, you have to completely, as a producer and part of the team, develop that technology, and then you have to make sure that it's invisible to the audience and invisible to the artists, our filmmaking artists. Well, I don't know how much the original filmmakers knew they were creating gold with the music that they did, but they just did something so brilliant with that movie. I mean, I think half of what people remember from that movie is the music. So we're standing on their shoulders, remember, and we had the opportunity to say, you know what, these are classic songs. These are songs that live on 25 years hence, hopefully 25 years from now, and they deserve the best treatment. So we hired Donald Glover, who, AKA Childish Gambino, who sings the heck out of this music. And Beyoncé, need I say more? I mean, born to Nala, we're so lucky to have her. But the two of them at the musical core of this, along with Hans Zimmer, who's just the most amazing composer.
That's the challenge, is how do you take something that people revere so much? And so Jon, I think he's very sensitive to that, and he's careful to preserve everything that people love about the film, and also taking the other material, the stage play, and there's a lot that people love about that, and just sort of taking everything that he can to honor this story and honor the film and make the fans happy, all sort of in service of telling this wonderful story. Coming into it, one of the things we knew we had to do from the get-go, based on just our love of the old film and also the fan reaction to the announcement, everything, we knew we had to keep these songs. They were, as much as people love these scenes with Mufasa and Simba, it's Hakuna Matata and the Circle of Life and I Just Can't Wait to Be King. These are really important to this film. Like, you can't have Lion King without those. And so it's great to be able to have actors who can actually sing. Going into it, you knew James Earl Jones. I can't think of anyone else who could ever play Mufasa. That was just, there's no other choice, right? And fortunately, he's able to be Mufasa still. And that was a pretty easy decision to make. And at the same time, we announced Donald Glover, who, just to us, was just absolutely perfect for playing adult Simba. I mean, his singing career is incredible, and to have his talent in his improv background, and he's on fire right now. He's doing so many creative things, and it's just, he's perfect for the role. And so we announced the two of them together to tell the public, like, we're going to honor the original, and also here's what we're bringing new to it.
I think Zazu is basically a bird who likes structure. So, you just want things to be as they are. And again, I think there are British echoes there, because we tend to favour structure in lieu of having an emotional reaction to anything. And even in answering your question, I'm not emotionally engaging in this at all. I'm just going through the structure of a basic question-answer response. So you basically deflect all powerful feelings about anything into a process of how things should be done. That's Zazu in a nutshell. Well, I liked Zazu when I was a kid, so I'm a fan of him, and now I'm just trying not to ruin him for future generations. I guess, I really loved the character of Zazu because he was funny. I liked funny characters in things. I guess partly because they're not fully emotionally engaging in any situation, but I like kind of witty animals. I've always liked a wisecracking bird, and so now I am that wisecracking bird. I think, Zazu is kind of in awe of Mufasa as a leader, and so then he kind of takes it upon himself to put Simba under his physical and metaphorical wing to kind of help him through what are going to be challenges in his young lion life. So I think he feels a lot of responsibility for him without, being able to protect him in any physical way due to the fact, he's a bird. The thing I liked about The Lion King the first time was that, the scale of it, the animation scale of it, felt kind of new, and this is going to feel the same way again, because it's barely fathomable unless you work in this particular world of animation to know how it is physically possible to do the things that they are doing.
This was the one I identified as the one that I felt I could really do something special with, because I understood how important that inherited relationship with the material and the characters was, and with the music. And it was it has such powerful themes and such timeless themes. Not musical themes, that as well, but I mean themes, emotional themes, and themes that predate the film. You're dealing with archetypes and struggles that, going back to Hamlet and before, when you're dealing with all of the betrayal and the coming of age and death and rebirth and all of the cycles of life that are what the foundation of all the myths around the world. We were talking a lot about whether we wanted new music or we wanted new characters or we wanted to replace something with something else. And what we found as we explored it, because we always keep the old film loaded up. So as we're looking at with our story department, looking at animatics, looking at sequences, looking at cuts, we'll always go to the old one and just check it one last time. And I have to say, quite often, the way the old movie did it was the right way to do it, and we end up emulating that. The idea behind Black Box was I don't need to have the actors motion captured. We did that, we used those techniques with Jungle Book. It was helpful to a point, by talking to the people on the technical side, more often than not, the data is used as reference, but they'll be building their own performances through animation on top of what the actor's doing. However, what's incredibly valuable is the performance of the actor. And so using the actor's performance as a jumping off point for an animator creates consistency. You inherit the actor's sophistication in the choices that they make. Having Donald Glover, who's an amazing singer, also amazing improviser, which is one of the things that really drew me towards to him, because he comes from a very common comedic background that I do, and he came up, you know, with a lot of the people that I came up with. You know, I was in the Chicago improv scene and overlaps with UCB and Tina Fey's world and all that. So I knew that we were going to have a common take on how to do comedy and how to do that type of performance. For the older version of Nala, you have Beyoncé, who is, when you think of somebody who you'd be excited to hear reinterpret this role, especially the musical performances, she's sort of in a class all by herself. I knew the audience was going to be hyper-focused on what we're doing. And I felt that I have come to a point in my career that I understand that relationship. And they're excited by the prospect of seeing the story told again, but they're also nervous that you're going to do it in a way that they don't like. And anything, you know, on the one hand, they don't want you to change anything, but on the other hand, they don't want to just see the same thing all over again. And so it becomes this, enigmatic puzzle of how do you deliver on everybody's expectations and surprise them. And so I felt that I would use the approach that Walt Disney always used, which is engage on an emotional level, because that cuts through so much of the, you know, the scrutiny. If you could connect, if you could make people feel something, it turns the judgmental part off, and it engages the immersive, empathetic, emotional part that I contend is the key aspect of the film viewing experience. Well, people often ask me if it's live action or if it's animation, and I guess the best answer is it's both, because we make a fully animated film, but then we go into that animated film and we make a live action film around the animation, and but I guess it's a tough one to answer, and I like that people are asking the question, because it means that they're going to look at it and they're going to scratch their heads and they're going to deliberate over what it feels like to them. Because technically it's animated, but when you look at it, it's going to look live action. So it should fit in within the gallery of live action animated adaptations. But yet, if you look at the skill and what went into it, it completely lives within the tradition of Disney animation. And so I think it's both. And I don't think you could really understand it until you see it and then you see how he did it. But what's good is it doesn't matter. What's good is if you go to the movie, you're going to be drawn in and you're going to see something that you've never seen before. I think if you have very clear and clean mythology associated with a story, it makes my job as a filmmaker much easier, because throughout the process of writing and developing and shooting and editing, you're trying to refine the story to something that's satisfying. And ultimately it is, you know, the hero's journey, the monomyth, that all of these types of stories always tend to fall into the pattern of. There's different versions of it, but it's always the rise of the hero. There's always a predictable path of the plot as films or stories unfold. And The Lion King adheres very closely to that. And so it has a timeless quality, and it tends to play for different generations and around the world because it has such a relatable story. to me, casting is probably the most important part of making a film, because those partnerships are what get you through, and ultimately, it's whose face is going to be on the screen. And in the case of The Lion King, although their faces are on the screen, their voices are so prominent and their personalities are defining the film. And long before anybody knows what you're doing or sees any footage, they're going to hear about who's in it. And so it sends a message to the audience as to what this film is going to be like. Now, as you get closer to films like Jungle Book and then Lion King, and I'm working on Star Wars now with The Mandalorian, you are dealing with a very engaged audience that oftentimes with these properties have grown up with them and they have an emotional connection to them. In certain cases, spanning several generations within their family. So you're not just remembering Lion King, you're remembering Lion King when you saw it when you were 7, or you're remembering Lion King when you brought your kid to it, or you're remembering Lion King when you saw it and then you introduced your kid to it, and then you went to the musical. And so you have this whole basket of memories and emotions that are related to this thing. And so there's a certain protectiveness that people feel because those memories belong to them. And although the IP came from the team that made the original productions, the memory and the sense of connection and even ownership is very much part of very much in the audience's mind. And I think that to not acknowledge that or understand that is to not be serving the property.
What we did on Jungle Book is we had people in their traditional ADR recording sessions, and that was great. But what you find is that they just have their script, and they tend to look down at their script and look back up at the monitor and look down at their script. Jon came up with this concept of having actors actually interact in a volume. So he called it Black Box Theater, which is essentially a big room with a big black room with 6 reference cameras. People as invisible as possible so the actors can really feel like they're by themselves and actually engaging. And that way you get winks, looks, distance. Not just research, but inspiration. You know, the people that needed to be inspired and understand how Africa really is went. Caleb Deschanel, our production designer, James Chinland, the VFX team, Adam Valdez, Andy Jones, who needed to find his lions and watch how they actually behave in their natural, environment with his eyes. Great things came from it. We have video that Andy has from, he found a baby lion and he liked the way he walked, and we're watching everything from his strut to the thickness of his legs to the amount of flies on him, everything, how full his belly is. There's so many things you learn on top of the textures and the environments and where this could really happen. You want the actor to be able to be the one singing, and there are so many amazing, talented people out there. Jon had run into Donald Glover at an event at a round table and was trying to lure him. He's obviously an immense talent in every category, and that was really exciting. Beyoncé is, the best pipes around, and that is really exciting. As far as the young Simba and Nala, we started looking at local talent and talent around the U.S. as well as those who have already performed on Broadway, and that was great. But as far as James Earl Jones goes, there's no one that can be James Earl Jones.
It was overwhelming. I'm not even sure if there's another word for it other than overwhelming. It's such a cultural flashpoint in the history of our country, in the history of animation. It's something that resonates with me. It was something. It's one of those things I saw in the theater, and it was. I just felt humbled and privileged to be a part of this. It's mythical in a way. Kamari feels like he's second in charge, and he's very kind of quick on his feet, and understands how the system works, understands that he needs to be loyal. Komari's very patient with Azizi, who is played by the brilliant Eric Andre. And because he's very sarcastic and has a real nice kind of way with words, and Azizi does not grasp sarcasm easily. And so he's like, okay, I was making a joke, but now I'm going to have to explain the joke to you. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I mean, whatever that looks like in hyena world, there's a lot of that going on. So, but he's a loyal soldier. He's a loyal soldier to the cause, to the hyena cause, and so he's really, he's a bit of a character. I'm humbled. I'm to be in the company of these other people, especially people who have been using their voice to make living. You think of Donald Glover and the Childish Gambino, and how he has made such a mark on our world and on our industry by being this multi-hyphenate. And then, I'm sorry, Darth Vader? I mean, you get to I get to say I was in a movie with Darth Vader. But Darth Vader is one of many things that James Earl Jones has done in his storied career. And I'm just so blessed that I get to be counted among these people. And we're talking about wonderful comedic actors, and John Oliver and Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner and Eric Andre. It's such a lovely, but then dramatic actors like Alfre Woodard and Chiwetel Ejiofor. The hits just keep on coming, and it's such a privilege. It's a privilege to be asked to have been just. I would have been the smallest part of this. Whatever they wanted, I would have done. You know, can I sweep the floors and I just really admire the wide, vast array of talent that's been assembled for this film. Jon's palette, his creative palette, is very wide. I mean, he's painting with a lot of different paints. I feel like I think of Jon Favreau and I go, so what would you call it, a quintuple threat? Yeah, I mean, the man has comedic timing, the man has technical know-how, the man has been on both sides of the camera successfully in very classic films. So not only does he understand as a writer how a film works and how a story moves forward and how to propel characters into the next situation, he knows how to do it also as a performer. I mean, you don't get to be in movies. I mean, you get to make The Jungle Book and you were also in Swingers and Rudy? What? So, so you as an actor, you have this wonderful sense of safety around a director who understands rhythms and also understands intonation, and also understands what an actor's motivation might be, and if there was a way to enhance or intensify that motivation. He's the real total package in that regard. And the fact that he has so much passion for the technical side of the story is fantastic.
So there's a storyboard story department that comes up and sort of fleshes out. It's almost like the script writing portion, where you see the script come to life and change the script to create the beats. Then when we get it on stage, then we take that, we sometimes ignore the storyboard frame, sometimes we incorporate them in, depends if what we like the ideas in them. But it's so much easier once you're in the environment to pick the shot that really couldn't be done that well in storyboard form. The idea might be there, but the visual is not. So we're really doing it identically to what we did on Jungle Book, except a much more immersive, much more collaborative, where the crew could now walk into the same environment, experience the same things, and then rub off each other what they like, and then it invites a discussion that otherwise you would never have. Black box theory is the idea is to basically uninhibit the actor. They can walk around, ad-lib, improv a certain thing, spark off each other, and then the performance that comes off of that is now much more elevated or another iteration of performances. And that's what Jon's an actor, so he really likes that, and because then he gets to interact with them like he would on a stage. And so that part is what we set up to do. And then we just photograph with multiple cameras so the animators can see the intent of the actor, even though it's not a direct translation because they're not an animal, they are But when they pause and they look and they stop and you see them thinking, you know that that's what the drive of the performance is.
I was a huge fan of the original movie. I grew up with it. I've seen it so many times, but yeah, and so it's a little hard at first to kind of separate yourself from it and to just not organically do the thing that the other person's doing. But I think it's different enough that it became pretty clear pretty early that there would be ways to create a new dynamic between the characters, basically. It's so gratifying and amazing, and the idea of getting to relive that story in a new way is really exciting, I think, as someone who loves the movie. It's exciting knowing that I get to watch another version of that movie, and that it'll deliver on all the stuff that I love and elevate it probably in some way, because it is so contemporarily, executed in such a new way. Seeing him interact with his team is those kinds of things to me are what's really helpful. Seeing him talk to his composer, seeing him talk to the DP, seeing him talk to the writers, seeing how those people interact, seeing Hans talk to Pharrell about different ways to approach the songs. I mean, that kind of stuff is like a dream come true, and I fully try to absorb it and listen to what everyone's saying and and then steal the good stuff and apply it to my own work whenever possible.
I think that I started watching the movie when I was about maybe 5 or 6. I can't really remember. But I definitely loved seeing it. And I was like, wow, I want to be young Nala one day. And then, a couple years after that, then I got, The Lion King on Broadway. And then a couple years after that, here I am today as young Nala in, the all-new Lion King. Well, the characters are very iconic, so I feel very proud just to be a part of it. And I definitely want there to be, a lot of inspiration in the characters as well, like the same as the ones, in the original movie. So that's why I wanted to add in some really nice characteristics into young Nala to make her, inspiring to, other little girls just like me when I was watching the original one. I think that it's really just the sense of family that, all of the lions have together in the Pride Lands. I think that kind of reminds people of their own families because, I don't know, maybe some family member might be a little bit, off the rails or, something like that. But I think that it's really relatable and it's just a story that you can watch with your whole family. Nala is super enthusiastic. She's so smart. She's really selfless, and I think that she really just wants to share all of the amazing qualities with herself to the rest of the world, and I definitely love that about her. And she's so inspirational, and that's incredible for for young little girls, and for basically anybody who's watching the movie. Jon Favreau is so sweet, and it's great because after shooting, I got to see him in so many films that I've never seen before, and I was like, oh, I know him, and that was awesome. And as I said before, he gives us so much freedom to just work on our characters, with ourselves, and it was really awesome working with him. I would definitely want to work with him again.
I think the human emotion for The Lion King was something that was quite unique to a lot of the Disney classics. It's something that resonated very deeply in all of us because the circle of life. And to see how that circle evolves through generations is something that is something quite unique to any film that I know of. And to be able to have it be a timeless classic that's then been brought into a Broadway stage play that people have been enjoying for years and years. And even the original animated movie, going back and watching it, I watched it with my kids just recently, and it still is so poignant. And I think it's the circle of life that gave it that human quality that we could all relate to. Even though there's not a human character in the movie, you get it. I think now is a prime time to bring this film back into kind of the consciousness of people because of what's going on in our world in terms of how resources are being protected and what that means as humanity. But at the same time, technology, we're at the point now where we've found a way to make this film very unique in a way that we weren't able to do before. I know that Jon and the team, they really pushed the envelope on the Jungle Book, but even the envelope that they're pushing then is very different from what we're doing now, and we've been able to find some ways of making it even better. Oh my gosh, it's so inspirational when you see Beyoncé and Donald Glover and Chiwetel and so many of our cast, and you have something in your head because you have the original Lion King, but then when you see them speaking the words or singing the songs, you go, oh yeah, that's this Lion King. It still gives you that same feeling, and it just elevates it to a new level.